I mentioned in my earlier contribution that the discharge of pollution from especially cruise ships is a significant issue in my home state of Tasmania, especially in the home port of Hobart. And what we're dealing with here is rising emissions and direct pollution into our ocean and into our communities. And while shipping absolutely plays a contribution to rising emissions, and there's things we need to do to reduce that pollution, especially greenhouse gas pollution, we need to have a broader discussion about the impacts of other sources of pollution on our oceans, starting with, of course, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions. And I raise this in the context of pollution and the impact that rising greenhouse gases are having on my home state of Tasmania. Tasmanian waters are warming at 4 times the global average, the fastest rate of any marine environment on the planet. The waters off the east coast of Tasmania are seen as a global hotspot for ocean warming, and we've seen devastating impacts. We've seen devastating impacts on our marine environment. We've seen the virtual loss of our giant kelp forests that stretch from the northeast of Tasmania, Mount William National Park, all the way down to the tip, the southwest Cape of Tasmania. There's only a few remaining. They were listed as a critically endangered habitat in 2012. Yet, what have we done about these ecosystems that were nurseries for commercial fisheries, that provided so much input into the health of our oceans off East Coast Tasmania? What we've continued to see is rising global emissions and rising emissions in this country, in Australia. We've only just recently allocated some funding to try and regrow those kelp forests. The warming oceans and the currents that are leading to this global hotspot off the east coast of my home state of Tasmania have also seen the scourge of invasive urchins, Centra stephanus, which have been a significant problem in the waters off New South Wales. They have now invaded the reefs off the east coast of Tasmania. The Institute of Marine and Antarctic Studies say that by 2020, so next year, they expect that 1/3 of Tasmania's productive reefs off the east coast of Tasmania will be gone, Acting Deputy President, made barren, and that's the word they use. They're called urchin barrens, barren of all life underwater. Now, it's hard to see marine ecosystems. It's easier in terrestrial ecosystems to see the impacts of global warming, and we've seen that with fires up and down the east coast of Australia and also in Tasmania. But it's a lot harder to see the impacts underwater. But fishermen know what's going on. The abalone industry has been devastated in Tasmania. The rock lobster industry has been devastated. All species of fish that are caught by recreational fishers and commercial fishers have had significant quota reductions. We've seen a severe impact of the warming waters off our coasts on aquaculture, on Pacific oyster mortality syndrome. Millions of fish killed in the salmon industry from uprisings, from a lack of oxygen, all associated with pollution, all associated with rising emissions. Everything we can do, we need to do to reduce emissions. And this bill today and the Greens amendment would play a critical role in doing that. I want to be very clear. The other threat to Tasmania's oceans, indeed all oceans in this country and around the world, is the continued insanity and madness of oil and gas exploration off our coasts. We continue to issue seismic permits to open up new areas to go and explore for fossil fuels. Now, the Senate's going to examine the impact of seismic testing very soon. Bizarre that in a $1 trillion industry, with our offshore oil and gas industry, only a few $1 million over all this time has been spent on assessing the scientific impact of seismic testing on not just marine creatures but also on commercial fisheries and broader ecosystems. But we know the threat from oil spills are very real. We had the Montaro oil spill off northwest Australia not that long ago, Acting Deputy President, and it devastated the seaweed industries in the poor country to our north, Indonesia. We saw what happened with BP in the US, and one of the biggest disasters, environmental disasters in our history. Deepwater Horizon, worth watching that film if you haven't seen it. Yet we have just issued new permits for companies to explore the Great Australian Bight and off the northwest coast of Tasmania and off Newcastle and off Sydney. Let me tell you, Acting Deputy President, the fight against oil and gas drilling off our coasts is a proxy battle for a fight against climate change. Because Australians are waking up and they're saying, why are we doing this? Why are we risking pollution on our coastlines from oil drilling? Why are we exploring to burn more fossil fuels when we already have reserves of oil and gas around the world to push us above 3 degrees of global warming? Why are we doing this? Well, I would like to say a message to the CEO of Equinor, the Norwegian state-owned company that seems so insistent on drilling the Great Australian Bight, a pristine, virgin area of ocean, a breeding ground for so many species, including the whales that migrate to the Southern Ocean. My message to you, sir, is please reflect on the lack of social licence you have in this country. Just weeks ago, tens of thousands of Australians in coastal communities paddled out at their local beaches to say, no way, Equinor, you will not risk our coast. This is not a time in history where we need to be exploring for more fossil fuels. The Great Australian Bight Alliance has stretched right around this country, and as a surfer, I'm very proud of my tribe for standing up and saying, no, this has got to stop. And I plead with the CEO of Equinor, who have till the 30th of December to lodge. They've lodged their plan with NOPSEMA. NOPSEMA have till the 30th of December to make a decision. I plead with the CEO of Equinor, walk away from this, please. I urge you to consider the community response right around this nation, the tens of thousands of surfers and coastal communities that have come out and said, no way, Equinor. Please consider this. You don't have a social licence. Give these Australian communities, give these surfers a Christmas present by walking away from this. Now, I know that the government's been in your ear, probably Senator Canavan, who's in this chamber, amongst one of them, saying, do not walk away from this. We need you to go and explore this pristine area of our ocean. You don't need to do it. We don't need fossil fuels anymore. We desperately need to transition to clean forms of energy. And I want to read you a post from a surfer who's a leader in the surf community around this country. His name's Sean Doherty. He writes as an editor for a number of the large surf magazines. He also advocates for environmental issues, and he's on the board of the Surfrider Foundation, a global marine conservation group that I used to be part of. Indeed, I used to be on the board of the Surfrider Foundation in Australia. He has a post this morning saying, Equinor retreats from frontier exploration in the Arctic. Equinor retreats from frontier exploration in the Arctic. And he quotes a quote from the CEO in Equinor, Vice President of their Exploration and Frontier Development, who says, the Arctic was always a frontier area, almost a virgin area. We sometimes forget that there was high risk on drilling in this area. And he goes on to say, I know some people will be disappointed with our decision to pull out of drilling the Arctic, but it is not surprising. How is the Great Australian Bight different to the Arctic? There is no oil and gas fields in the Great Australian Bight. It is one of the most beautiful, stunning oceans and coastlines in the planet that is a nursery to so much marine life. Do not risk our oceans when they are in a time of crisis. They are fast being broken by Homo sapiens and our insatiable demands for money and for profits. and for business as usual, the stupidity, the insanity that's got us in this situation in the first place. And I plead with Equinor, do the right thing and walk away from Australia and walk away from this high-risk exploration. And I'd also like to put on record, while we are debating a bill around marine pollution, I would also like to put on record my thanks and my gratitude to the thousands of surfers and Australians in their communities around this nation who have stood up time and time again and said, no way, Equinor. Big oil don't surf. We do. This is our coastline. We don't want to risk it. It's our time in history to be making brave decisions, to protest and to transition our economies and our communities to a renewable energy future. Acting Deputy President, just let me finish by saying business as usual is insanity when you see the changes, the tipping points we are seeing around the planet. I have chaired 2 Senate inquiries into what's happening in the Barrier Reef in the last 5 years. I've been to the reef. I've heard, like a number of my colleagues have, from hundreds of scientists who have openly said to me, including the IPCC scientists, who have a case study in their latest report on oceans and the impacts off Tasmania. I've heard them say, none of us in our lifetime predicted we would see things tip so quickly. None of us predicted we would see things tip so quickly. Our best models predicted it wasn't possible to have back-to-back bleachings on the Great Barrier Reef till 2050. Our best models predicted that, and we got it in 2016 and 2017, and things have got worse. We've lost thousands of kilometres of mangroves up in the Gulf. We have seen impacts on our oceans across Western Australia, the loss of seagrass beds. It is a crisis. It is a crisis, and it is frightening and it is distressing to communities. We need to do everything we can to act on this, and we are not doing enough. Australia is a custodian of the Barrier Reef. It is an island girthed by sea. We have a leadership role to play, not just on marine plastics, which is an area I'm glad this government is finally focusing on. We have a custodian role of the Great Barrier Reef. We have a World Heritage UNESCO committee looking at the status of the reef as we speak. No one can deny the impact that climate has had on the world's reefs. I surfed recently in the Maldives. 90% of the reefs. 90% of the reefs, Senator Canavan, you would be shocked to know, Senator Canavan, to you, Chair, 90% of their reefs are dead. I've witnessed it. I have seen it. We know half the Barrier Reef now is dead. The single biggest living organism on this planet. It is dead, Senator Canavan. Look at the science, and it is people like you that come into this place and pull the levers for the fossil fuel industry that will be responsible for this. You will be held accountable by future generations. Let me assure you, what you are doing is tantamount to criminal activity. You are climate criminals if you continue down this road of burning fossil fuels when all the warning signs are there and you choose to ignore them. It is not acceptable. It is not acceptable. So I will bring this back to what we have in front of us today, which is a small ask and contribution. You laugh, Senator Canavan. I wish the cameras could capture your face laughing while the reef dies, and you, Senator Stirl, acting like a clown over there. You think it's funny that our oceans are dying? Do you think it's funny? Right. Yes, you bloody well do, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Senator Whish-Wilson, please resume your seat. Interjections are highly disorderly. Senators are expected to be heard in silence, and I do ask senators contributing to the debate to ignore interjections. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. Well, it's been a long, difficult year for all of us, so it's no wonder that I'm emotional and tired and angry and calling it the way it should be called in this place. Calling it the way it should be called. And I'm disgusted that some senators think this is funny. You're a hypocrite. Really? Okay. So I'll take that. I'll take that interjection. Who else in this place has consistently called for action on our oceans? who has consistently called for actions on our oceans. The only party that has been consistent have been the Greens. We have been the only one who have been willing to highlight the damage to the barrier reef, to call out the damage to our oceans, to stand with communities. It's just a sad shame that while we've had families come from places like the Northern Rivers this week who've put the contents of what remains left of their home at the front of this building and have called for politicians to work together and to cooperate and to stop acting like children, that we get outbursts from the likes of Senator Sterle in here, or what we got this week trying to drag up a 10-year-old policy debate as though somehow that is fixing the problem. It's not. It's making things worse. It is high time that MPs across all political spectrums came together to solve this problem. Last night at the Greens Christmas party, Acting Deputy President, we had 20 or 30 of the country's fireys there last night at a Greens Christmas party. You consider that, Senator Canavan, a Greens Christmas party where we have 20 or 30 of the nation's most senior fireys coming to our Christmas party. Today they stood outside Parliament and said they moved a motion calling for a transition out of fossil fuels. You go away and consider that, Senator Canavan. That's the nation's fireys out there calling for you to transition. And what are you doing? You're trying to burn more fossil fuels. You're trying to actively not only support these projects and remove obstacles in front of them, you're trying to fund them. You're trying to put government money in propping up ailing coal-fired power stations. You are trying to put government money into these projects. You will do anything to condemn future generations on this planet, and we will call you to account every single time.